Hi team, Coach Alexia here. So in this week's video, continuing my series on health stuff, I wanted to talk about joint conditions. So there are very many different categories of joint conditions. I guess probably the most common, certainly in Europe and North America, is osteoarthritis. So this is the gradual narrowing of the space between the two parts of a joint. So if you've got a hip which is ball and socket, that larger gap that used to provide the synovial cushioning and is filled with cartilage and stuff, gradually over time as we age will just get a little bit thinner and a little bit thinner. So you might get pain, inflammation, swelling. There might be a little bit of bony sort of damage that starts to accruing, little nodules that kind of grow on the bones. It's something that unfortunately happens to us all if we're lucky enough to live long enough. But even with osteoarthritic joints, I still have runners that run on them with early stages of osteoarthritis. And I also still have worked with runners who have had, I guess, the most common treatment for osteoarthritis, which is a joint replacement, most commonly in knees and hips. There are only certain joints of the body that you can replace, so they're not going to replace your ankle, for example. It's quite a complicated joint, the old ankle. I'm going to replace a toe joint. I've got osteoarthritis in one of my big toe joints, which impacts my running a little bit. They're not going to be able to replace that either, but knees and hips are the most common ones. Now, obviously, this video in no way replaces any information you've had from your health professional, but it is definitely worth asking, am I okay? Are there any restrictions on the sports I do? Lots of sports involve running, don't they? So tennis, football, even gym stuff like High Rocks now involves a little bit of running in it as well. So, there rarely these days are there restrictions, but it always is worth checking on running on joint replacements. And it's worth knowing that, the evidence around the replacement joints that they were putting into people sort of 20 odd years ago is that those replacements are lasting a lot longer than they originally thought. And material science has come on a lot further again in that last 20 years. So the joint replacements they're putting in people now are going to last a lot longer than those that were being putting in 20 years ago. So the overall functionality and what you can do with those replacement joints can be really, really quite impressive. Andy Murray is a great example. His is what's called a resurfaced hip, but really it's not a resurfaced hip. So in a full hip replacement, if that's your leg bone, then there's a bit of a bend, a joint in it, and then there's there's a bit of a curve in it, and then there's the ball joint. In a standard hip replacement, they take the whole lot off down to about there, and replace all of that bit. In a hip resurfacing, they just take the ball off, so it's still a replacement really, but they're just replacing just that bit as opposed to all of this bit. And I mean, he's been playing top level tennis on that for years, hasn't he? So if he can go away with doing that, which is a really quite high impact multi-directional sport, then it's going to be fine for most of the rest of us, isn't it? The other thing that is worth just mentioning, I guess, is that the additional massive benefits we can get as runners and anyone who does any sort of sport from strength training to look after our joints. So strength training would improve the stability of that joint. It's basically build your own knee brace, for example. If you do leg strength training, you're deloading that joint because the musculature around it is stronger and can take some of that load, and you're also providing more stability to the joint, so you're less likely to get little tweaks and sort of moments where you go, "Ooh, no, shouldn't have done that, that was the wrong movement." There's a huge amount of evidence that's come out and still comes out of the world of football, because they have a lot of knee injuries and also a lot of money to spend on research into it, which is handy for us, that strength training can actually be a really good non-surgical rehab option to get people back to playing, elite level sport really quite quickly. So in a lot of cases now, not with osteoarthritis, it's not happening to these young football players, but with meniscus injuries, sort of ligament tears, with cartilage damage in a sporting capacity within the knee joint, then a lot of those can be rehabbed back to full function with strength training alone, which is a really, really good outcome. And the other advantage is that doing strength training in general will improve your power and speed when you run too. So I guess to recap or to wrap up, There are loads and loads of things that you can do with various different joint conditions, including osteoarthritis and joint replacements, with guidance from your medical professionals. I've coached many different runners with lots of different conditions to be able to keep fit, active, healthy, and live a relatively unchanged, in some cases, fulfilling and active life. So if that's something I can help you with, then just drop me a line.